Hello, and welcome to another Daily Reflection with Ben Wolkoff. Today, I need to do some deep reflection based upon some observation and support that a number of district employees are doing over at the middle school math sites that are implementing iPads and the Pearson system of courses application in those math classrooms, those middle school math classrooms. And it was over at North Middle School today, and the observation was a struggle. I had to force myself a couple of times to kind of stay in the room and stay in the space to understand what was going on for the teachers, who I think are in a spot where they don't necessarily need the technology as much as they need the culture of the classroom. And what I mean by that is there was a significant amount of struggle that the teachers were having for instructional elements, and then that students were having for learning elements. And without putting too fine a point on it, there was not a huge amount of learning that was happening inside of those the classrooms that I observed. Now, this could be an anomaly. They were trying new things. They, obviously, I'm not faulting anyone in the process for what I observed, but I am very aware that by placing this layer on top of instruction, of this technological resource, it may be kind of glossing over broader or maybe even more important moves that that the teachers could be making and that the students could be doing in terms of ownership. There were lots of sort of empty spaces where the teacher was trying to facilitate the learning on the technology, whether that was Nearpod or Apple Classroom or Pearson system of courses or really any of the different tools and means that we saw there. And there's lots of like moments of where there's large gaps of time that were not necessarily being used for instruction, but rather where teacher was doing an action, and then students were waiting for that action, or the student was doing an action and the teacher was having to react to that action rather than pushing the instruction further, and things like that. And I have a deep-rooted belief in technology accelerating learning for kids and empowering personalization and understanding in the classroom. But I also know that any distraction from creating the types of cultures of thinking, the types of understanding for kids, then that is a barrier rather than an accelerator. And so how is it that we, as a team, how is it that we can, as individuals, can be in those spaces where what you are there for and what you are there to observe and be a part of is the use of the technology for learning. But what you observe and are a part of is the technology getting in the way sometimes of learning, as well as the technology just being a not necessarily the shiny thing, but really the glossy coat that goes over what's happening in the classroom, and you can chalk it up to, oh, the technology wasn't working, so the learning wasn't happening. Whereas there might be bigger issues around the classroom practice, around student ownership, around behavioral issues and things like that. And so that is something that I am going to need to do a lot more reflection. Fortunately, most of the classrooms that I am in, I do not experience those things, even when they're using technology, and you're able to have that sort of secondary conversation about how does this tool support this learning, or what is the learning that we're trying to accomplish, and how does this tool accelerate that? Like, but can we really have those conversations when it is 20 minutes before, from mini lesson that it's not really working with the vast majority of the kids in the classroom to getting to the first sort of practice for math or whatever the discipline is. And so if that's the situation that you were presented with, how do you coach for that? How do you support that in a room? How do you co-teach? Especially when you don't have rapport with those kids. And so I actually think that it might be valuable for me and perhaps for you as well to get into more of those classrooms where there is a struggle. Now, I don't think that those teachers are bad teachers, and I actually saw some good things that were happening in both of the classrooms that I was lucky enough to observe, right? As an outside observer, it's not my job to judge or to evaluate, but it is my job to reflect and think through how we might approach that when we see it, when we are, taking it up. So that's an initial reflection, and I encourage you to think through how you would handle that. How do you move forward with a classroom where the technology is either getting in the way of learning, or where the technology is glossing over the larger structural issues in the classroom, and it's being used as almost a scapegoat for why things are not working? And so how do you deal with those two issues? I think that's probably putting a finer point on the question. So I'm interested in your thoughts. Yeah, and please leave a comment if you'd like, or reply directly to me on that. I hope you have a great day of teaching, learning, leading, and creating.